critical
matchups. The matchup against Hanwha Esports yesterday, they had a pretty big potential to come back, actually. They bounced back and punished a lot of Hanwha Esports' plays. Whereas if you compare that to Peace's performance against Hanwha, which is kind of the measuring stick, the shared team between these two, it was not even close, unfortunately. As you know, was mentioned by Bev in that interview, you fall behind early, you find yourself falling behind in solo lanes, and you can really just, you know, kiss your chances of victory goodbye sometimes, and in the bottom lane especially there, that was where they had their biggest issue. But I think this is part of the reason why we are seeing such high priority on picks like the Irelia very early on in draft, because it's a pick that makes you feel like you've got your destiny in your own control.
你話要 detect 到啲聲啊？
即係佢
detect 到 LOL 啲聲。
係咪？翻嚟未？翻嚟未？
佢咁神奇可以 detect 到啲聲啊？
唔知喎。
咩啊？
冇直播緊，嗰個阿懵個台俾人 ban 撚咗。我今次好運姐同埋路西恩都俾人 ban 撚咗咯。
咩啊？咩？
冇直都話咩嘛？交 up 呢個世界賽啊嘛。
係咪阿蒙個咪收
AP jungle line, we saw an incredible play from him, the flash in sleep there to try to bring things back against Hanwha earlier on today. Gonna stick with what's comfortable for them here, at least at the start of this draft. They're going for this second pick.
Yeah, I mean, I like what he was able to do with the Lilia, and obviously if you have strong lanes to back up the Lilia, stuff that you're going to feel very nice. So it kind of flows along with what he said in his interview, how they have been playing. They just need to execute on it, and that's really been the issue. We do see Lilia is picked up once again.
咩而家？
而家直播啊！
有傷啊，一路都有傷啊。
有冇窒下窒下？
睇下邊條趴冇咯，你得條趴睇啫嘛。
check 應該啊。
點解俾人 ban 嘅？咩
係俾人 ban
你問阿夢啊？
你問 YouTube 啊？
你 WiFi
我覺得你嗰度實啲咯，不如你都係唔好講嘢啦。
咁撚仆街啊你！咁樣咁人言嘅。
阿塞勒斯。
are still left available. They will go ahead and take the Silas, which I don't think would have been banned by Peace.
Yeah, I don't think so necessarily either. Now,
我個咪講嘢好窒咩？
少窒咯。
咁如果咁樣咧，
好啲咯。
咁你哋有冇聽到其他集？
會食咗你啲字咯。
And as we've been talking about, as the narrative has gone, locking both of your soul lanes early does give your opponent counter pick potential, but with lanes like Irelia and Jace, you feel like you can really just react to what your opponent's going to do next. You don't have to really focus on
好似好啲咯。
咁有冇其他好嘈嘅聲啊？你哋聽唔聽到啊？
好似依家就冇咯。知你入八甲灣嗰陣時會唔會又嘈撚到飛起咯？
冇啊，我冇揸車啊，今日。我今日做守門神啊。
負責抄牌。
唔係，係睇
Zig's going to be taken off the board here. Another strong ban against Violet. We saw that earlier. And the cannon is removed. Interestingly, with both the Irelia and the Jace.
兩邊都未 pick 下兩柱啊！係 ban 到
就話 pick 咗隻咩咯 ？pick 咗隻 MK 仔啊！
thinking about, okay, I got to deal with this Lee Sen's flank potential. I got to deal with Silas, who can actually have a really.
艾菲利歐好似個名叫。
I understand the ban here, even though it doesn't make sense from a matchup perspective. It does make sense in terms of the synergy with the composition that Infinity.
會唔會揀啲咩法洛士嗰啲啊？
Continue to draft very aggressive kind of divey stuff. You can just throw out the slicing maelstrom and say, well, come at us. I dare you. Seen that sometimes before. Those reactive.
即係你哋開台齋喺個 chat room 度。
Seen in this game because of course he was banned. So.
咪開台有個 chat room 喺度咯。唔係嘅，啱啱捉咗鋪棋咯。
但係即係你哋把聲錄唔到入去嘅。
咩錄唔到入去啊？有我哋把聲喺度啊。
我把聲咧
喺度啊。
咁撚恐怖？
係啊。你啱啱講話揸車撞死人嗰啲錄晒落去㗎啦。
我6月4號揸坦克車啊嘛。
係咩？有冇碌過人啊？
唔方便透露呢個。
咩啊？唔係話冇人受傷咩？
嗱，碌唔碌人受唔受傷兩回事嘅，係啦，請你分開兩件事。你死啦！有人留言啊！邊個啊？
又係你啲好基友咯。
我咁多基友，點知邊個啫？
呢個基友唔係佢嘅喎，你嘅喎。
係咯。
Potentially. Now, they're looking towards this Lulu again for some of that mobility around the map. A lot more powerful with two strong melee frontliners. I like the Leona better because strong counterpick for lane. You've got the Xayah already very strong into this matchup.
對面搶咗隻魚空，
This is
所
my
以
biggest issue with the Recon.
點解要 ban 波比啊？波比咁廢都要 ban？
唔係啊，波比而家 T1 角啊上路。
係咩？
佢嗰招被動減少咗 CD 咧，帶不死之厄換血咧，喺上路打到超勁。
竟然係咁啊！係喎，佢嗰個盾飛出去係打到咩嘅喎？
普攻嚟啊嘛。
係喎。
佢之前改勁咗嘛，嗰個 CD 減短咗咧，佢嗰個配不死之厄咧，你執盾再打，再攞翻嗰個白盾咧，基本上係冇壓力咁係咁無傷活。
呢隊應該會好睇啲啊！通常外卡打外卡會好睇啲。
外卡多數係過嚟專殺嗰啲熱隊
咪就係兩隊實力平均咯，依家係。
唔係實力平均啊！通常實力平均嗰啲咧就會鳩龍噶啦。通常外卡咧打嘅方法冇咁正規，冇咁喺度龍撚到尾。
但係龍咪淨係韓國專利嘅咩？
咁依家好多韓仔走出去大陸噶嘛？
咩啊？大陸隊唔係韓國隊嚟嘅咩？
錯，係韓國嘅分支，只不過夾雜咗啲國人喺入邊啫。佢哋都係韓國隊。
一個中國人，4個韓國人。
好似外援淨係俾2個依家，好似外援好似實行咗好耐。
反正主力唔係中國人。
咁嗰啲移咗籍嗰啲計唔計啊？
真係你問翻 LOL， 你問翻拳頭，不過你諗下拳頭又係騰訊嘅，
咪某個紅色嘅強大勢力咯。
係咯，咁你問下佢啦。死啦！我哋咁樣講嘢，個台會唔會冇人咗噶？死啊！
都冇人睇，
都冇人睇，係咯。睇嗰啲都唔等係人。
You're not going to make it through. It's just really not going to happen unless you have some insane tiebreaker that somehow you're able to make it in, but very unlikely. So both of these teams, they're kind of for their tournament chances.
日日都打到凌晨2點㗎，你可以。
Because they, of course, have gone up against some other strong teams and lost them. Yeah,
而家個賽場喺邊啊？
我聽喺歐洲咯，但係歐洲邊忽唔知咯。
冰島咯咪話。
記得啊嘛。
有入圍賽冰島打。
I do feel like what's been really cool about watching Peace play is they bring a completely different flavor to the beginning of this.
呢度暈到啊！斬吉多下 Q 可以。
That's happening already. We got the flash out of the Silas at level 1. And I believe Doublelift did say he was the faker of Latin America, but let me tell you a little story about Tally. As I have to hold on to that as we do get a knock up, but no, it is Leona with Aftershock, so she is just fine. Starting with Atlas before
想飛。
gave me a little tidbit that Tally is one of the longest standing players.
玩冰鳥咯，冰鳥咪飛咯。
He had many names in the past, and he actually played many roles as well. He used to play the captain at the top.
呢度繞咗個後喎。
I don't think I'm gonna get to finish my story.
先加咗個閃。應該食埋呢隻冰都差唔多要翻去啦嘛。硬要推埋入去塔入邊喎。
It's a very nice name. I wish he would have stuck with it.
Sure. Hold that thought though. Solid Snake is not done here. Smite fight on the scuttle.
呢個河蟹就紅方攞咗啊！
Well, look, I gotta say about this, I appreciate the anecdotes about Tally, one of our more experienced players, but one thing that's been true.
個時間咪就係個遊戲時間咯。冇理由播晒成個畫面出嚟㗎。咁啊叫轉播㗎啦，唔係叫共同視聽㗎啦，會俾人 ban 台㗎。
just collapsed on. I think a lot of people consider him the link for this team, and you see that Infinity Esports is already kind of going down that same vein. They are able to get his flash away, not able to get more. They do end up losing the scuttle here, as a little exchange down here on the bottom.
哇，生一絲血啊！
Cody was getting in on that one, forces the flash away from the Aurelia player Tali, and I'm gonna leave that lane in a good spot, actually pushing towards him. They both do have teleports, so it won't matter too much. But still, getting that flash away from Tali is big.
Yeah, it is pretty huge, and you know it does give you a lot of follow-up power potentially. Cody himself, he is going to be flashless, and in my research for Worlds and watching Cody play, you know, the Faker comparison I think might be a little bit much, but he is very strong on melee champions or assassins in the mid lane. We saw yesterday on the Zoe. A little bit shakier, a little bit rough on the edges in terms of that kind of precision style champion. Didn't end up coming up big for him, a few misplays there. But on the Silas, this is a champion that you want to see this guy on. You want to see him pop off and carry. One of the champions that I think it gives him a lot of skill expression, one that he excels at.
The trade here once again, but the not going to land. So you see Tally just standing up to that. A little bit of BM back and forth, gotta love it. But yeah, that really matchup is really interesting because Tally, you know, he's got so much experience.
利利亞仲未龍到6級，隊呢邊都冇乜嘢做。咁啊，睇下藍隊呢次嘅下路會戰啊，咁啊打咗個治療出嚟啫。
The minion wave here is so massive for Peace. If that minion wave is not there, you could probably just continue to push the issue, go forward there, and actually grab that kill, but not able to do so. With all of those minions, they do have to back away. Only getting the heal out of Violet, in fact, so not even getting any flashes there.
伊瑞利亞呢度開咗大招啊，咁啊留住咗塞勒斯，咁啊成功 first blood。
算快喎。
6分鐘差唔多啦。
平時係16分鐘先有第一個。
咁外卡打外卡就係咁上下㗎啦。
Vanguard's edge to clear things up there at the last moment, traps him in there, and damage is real at this stage in time.
佢兩隊都輸咗兩鋪喎。
係啊。
As watch again, Cody trades aggressively. Vanguard's edge locks him in just long enough here. He steals the Vanguard's edge himself, but it's not going to save you, not going to get you out. Can't cast it in time, and he's blown up there. Too much damage. Got to be so careful when you don't know where the enemy jungler is about trading that aggressively against a champion like Aurelia that can spin around on a dime.
Very nicely done. And
因為傑西留咗個傳送喎，慢慢行出嚟喎。
攞嚟支援啦，
應該係啦，小龍仲喺度，話唔定有優勢啊，順便打個小龍會戰咁樣咯。
He's actually not 100% sure. You know, he doesn't have a lot of vision, and with Meganar up, he's like, okay, I can't really be sure that I can approach this turret. The second that the Gnar backs away, he can finally.
8分鐘啊，預示者出嚟啦。
All throughout those first two games here, the play-in stage, and earlier in this game where he lost his flash. You got to respect that if you don't know where the Lee Sin is, you've just got to play a little bit passively up there. And Gnar is never going to be able to put that much damage on your turret. Yeah, he has demolished, so you can get a plate. As more trading in the mid lane.
Yeah, this time Solid Snake is nearby, and there is a ward that did spot him, so Tali just gonna laugh at him.
He's got level 6, but I don't think you want to commit with Cody nearby.
咁啊，南方啲人咧就靠晒上去上方噶啦，應該就係為咗呢條預示者。咁啊，中間咧就見到伊瑞利亞咧，順便收埋伊瑞利亞個頭啊！非常之順便啊！咁但係收完佢個頭之後咧，又落翻下路，冇繼續向呢個預示者進發。
This is going to be the type of game that is explosive, and getting early leads is so critical here for teams like these that need to get that early advantage, to get that tempo lead. You know, teams like these that aren't as skilled at taking small advantages in the mid game to turning them into late game advantages. You want to snowball this, and it's been very back and forth. Gold lead only 200 or 300 for Beast here in this early game. And yet, trading that kill back is so massive. The CS difference here on the something suddenly in my ear. Not sure if that was on stream or not, but anyway, the CS difference here for Tally is still pretty massive.
佢紅方想打，不過打唔到啊！
do it, but it's a very aggressive push into the river. It allows them to secure vision control at this point in time. White Lotus is going to the bottom side, trying to catch a wave. So if Peace were to go for this, this would be their time. Doesn't look like they want to get right on top of that.
我繼續龍咧，伊瑞利亞已經超越塞納斯30隻兵啦。咁啊，同埋就開緊預示者，咁啊，南方呢邊已經嚟到啦。
咁啊，下邊都嚟緊咯喎，等緊你咯喎。
咁啊，開咗個團啦。咁啊，呢度伊瑞利亞空大，
咁啊，難以一推。
咁啊，一個 chip 步橋啊，咁啊打到人追到去塔底，應該收埋呢個頭嘅。咁啊，逼咗個閃。
To back off of that play, but man, Trinity take a huge lead.
What a great decisive engage! I said unrealistic, but they forced.
喺混亂之中啊，李星食埋個預示者啊，呢一個位。
Now got 3 kills on this Gnar. Just barely is able to get that Gnar bar up. I mentioned it right before the fight. He didn't have it. Is able to get that up. Able to get the multi knock into the wall. And Peace stuck in that choke point, trying to back away. Almost felt like it was a shoo-in for them in terms of the comms there because they weren't positioned well to retreat from that. They wanted to stick the landing on finishing off that Herald. I mean, look at how low this goes before the engage. Look at Bugus' Narbar. And look at where he is, 1v3.
Yeah.
Such a perfect play from the Latin America player. Goes into the brush here, ward has to be used, and then boom. Double stuns there, the follow-up from Ackerman. So perfectly done in the choke point like that. They were the ones coming in.
咁啊，塞勒斯呢度俾人捉到啊！咁啊，連李星啊都走唔到啊！咁啊，經濟又會拉翻平啊！大家嘅經濟差又係嗰100零蚊啊！
Yeah, they're going to grab the Infernal Drake, the Scuttle with it, so a lot of extra gold and experience going over to Bobbit, but the big
咁啊，立兒呢度傳送向後啊！咁啊，睇下會唔會同傑西有個激烈碰撞啊！咁啊，傑西係冇閃嘅。好啦，呢度真係攞到個 solo 橋啊！咁啊，紅隊喺呢個時間咧就殺咗條火龍。
So at least Peace are able to get that, but man, some of their lanes, you know, especially Bugax is basically just running the show by himself. I mean, this is insane.
And the thing is, Silas against this composition can steal, obviously, the Vanguard's Edge, which is going to be quite critical, or the Solar Flare. And even though he is behind, even though he isn't fed, talking of course about Cody here in this game, he's going to be able to help set up with those ultimate hijacks Bugax to carry some of these team fights. Then you've got Nephelios and what he can do on top of that CC. So this is not a lost game for Infinity by any means. They've even taken a gold lead right now, but the disadvantage in mid can be shored up by this massive lead for the Gnar on the top side.
Yeah, and you know, generally Gnar not a carry champion, but when he gets Divine Sunder and he's 4-0, 13 minutes into the game, anybody can be a carry. So
yeah,
your dreams can be lived out. Even you Singed players out there, or any other kind of tanks, even the Ornn players out there, you can do it. And
just watch Morgan,
yeah,
or Kingen.
True. Yeah, I mean, Peace kind of grouped up for it at that Rift Herald fight, and Bugax found the perfect timing, and really, it's all kind of the dominoes falling after that. And
伊瑞利亞同塞勒斯換血啊，我都冇乜用啊。 兩邊都一個有吸血，一個有回血效果。咁啊，反而呢度伊瑞利亞應該俾人捉到啊，但係死嗰個居然係塞勒斯。
Bugax not able to get in and make that impact there. This is actually really well played by Tally because he knows his teammates are going to collapse in and save him. What looked like an extremely risky and greedy play ends up being the correct one. They're able to bait Cody in, get a pick here, stave off this Rift Herald pressure, and continue to maintain that control around the bottom side of the map. And unfortunately, yet again, even though Bugax has so much gold, if he doesn't have the ability to Gnar into these fights, or actually set up with Mega Gnar, be in the skirmish itself,話
說第幾個版本開始咧，啲 jungle 係唔會讓藍 buff 嘅咧。我依家長期都見到啲藍 buff 喺啲 jungle 身上面。
Obviously use this to their advantage, the fact that they have a 4-0 Gnar. We just have to get to those fights first, and they have to stave the bleeding before then. Going for a fight on the Tally right now.
But guess what? Solid Snakes here too. Nice dodge by Tally. He's trying to buy time for the Lilia to make his way up here. As a sleep will come in onto both of them. The Lee Sin trying to flash away.
哇！呢度立兒一推三啊，不過自己都死咗，收唔到頭。 剩翻最空一個，空一個冇輸出。
6-1, 10 sacks on that Dark Seal. That's a ton of extra gold going up to this Lilia, who makes the right call to come through. And I gotta say, Tally's performance on this Aurelia has been fantastic. His lead in the mid lane is part of why Cody is struggling to actually make an impact in some of these mid-game fights, where he's not able to teleport in. His teleport's often down. He's not able to join. If he did, he'd be
哇！啲經濟喺晒隻 Jungle 身上，7000蚊，仲有錢過喺線上面嘅。
And then it's just been so good at using Aurelia's Qs to get out of dodge, escape, and actually bait Infinity in. You see Bob come through there for the finish. And as you mentioned, he's 6-1 in this game now. Went for the burst damage again with this Luden's Echo. And I gotta say, Infinity really struggling to stick through this mid game where they can, if they don't take these poor fights, if they don't end up getting picked and overextending here, you can absolutely come back in the late game with the comp that you have. But the overextension here is real. Double sleep into the follow-up here from Baba, and that's 2 kills.
Yep. The new Axe effect replay shows us all the action here, as Peace really just shutting them down quite literally. And yeah, just really doing a good job, I think, playing around Bugax and him trying to kind of carry the team himself, playing around that pressure. Is allowing Peace to find opportunities up there as well.
咁啊，兩隊經濟都仲係好平均嘅喎。
都冇乜點樣太大嘅差距啊。呢個立比又再衝咗上去，咁傑西係有閃嘅，但係都可以靠住兵線啊，翻去自己塔底。
The thing about Visitachi right now is he's just kind of an annoyance. He's able to, you know, hold down the fort on the top side of the map, but every time the resources are committed to kill him, I mean, he's only died once this game. Every time that happens, you know, they're getting objectives on the bottom side of the map. Violet's able to farm freely, or you grab another Drake. It's the second one of the game here for Peace. And this 4-0 Gnar, who's now 4-1, doesn't feel like a 4-0 Gnar. You know, we talked about what he can do, the ifs, right? And he had that miraculous play around that first Rift Herald, but unfortunately Gnar isn't able to, until you go to those real 5v5 team fights, use that lead.
咁呢度會唔會越塔啊？我逼個閃啫，順便插埋咗塔。
Macro maneuver, they get into the mid lane, take it down, they get the flash at a White Lotus, and then they back away. They're going to use that gold to pick up some items as soon as they can.
I mean, unfortunately, Cody still hasn't picked up his first mythic yet. He's the only one realistically in this game who doesn't have one outside of the support. So, picking up some of that extra gold in the top lane, trying to struggle, trying to get by on low eco.
好，呢度理性啊放咗預示者啊，不過應該單靠立兒都應該拆咗座塔㗎啦。傑西呢一度攔截啊，咁啊應該預示者衝唔到塔㗎啦。
Guess where Tally's going. He's got a full wave up there. He knows that Infinity was grouped bottom. He's fairly free to push that. And he might just have a free turret on his hands. And Peace are going to rotate to support it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you can feel Peace slowly taking over this game with the Aurelia with the 6-1. Lilia, who has 2 items already at this point. Zonya's complete as well. It's just so oppressive. With the 10 stacks of the Dark Seal, as you mentioned, it's just like...
咁呢度再空成功捉到雷歐娜，咁啊塞勒斯呢度攞咗雷歐娜嘅大，諗住留住莉莉亞，咁啊莉莉亞憑住自己嘅移速啊走咗出嚟，但係都係走唔甩啊！呢度咧，傑西係傳送上嚟，阻住對方食龍啊！話始終3打5咧，就做個拉車就算啦。但係伊瑞利亞呢度俾人捉住咗，一路緩速啊，但係夠彈，到依家仲未死啊！都係頂唔順嘅，都係俾立兒
Just duet, and at least they get the kill, I suppose. But Peace at least stopped them from taking the Baron.
Yeah, Peace are going to be pretty happy with this. Yes, you lose.
呢度其實佢哋啲頭都幾集中噶喎，立而有7個頭，你哋嗌有6個頭。反而啲 carry 位啊、AD 啊、中路啊嗰啲冇頭。
Try to punish Bob. As we saw in that last fight, you called it out right before. Bob actually can be CC'd 100 to 0 if he is isolated while he's trying to be greedy. Meanwhile,
we're not wasting any time getting into more fights. Bugak's trying to go 1v1 with this Chachi, but we got the teleport coming in, but it's not doing enough for the side of Peace. And now this Silas is getting to work, but he's got Ignite onto him, and you see the damage here from Tally is just a little bit too much. Cody is gonna get
立兒變唔變到大咧？立兒嘅怒氣滿咗噶咯喎，但係空咗大啊佢。俾伊瑞利亞 set down 咗啊！咁啊，伊瑞利亞呢一度咧收咗塞勒斯同埋納爾人頭咧，應該就經濟上啊好開始轉好噶啦。
But you don't have the damage to finish off those targets without an AD carry behind you. And that's the issue here is Peace, I think, just kind of their eyes too big for their stomach in this fight, feeling, okay, we're really ahead, we can win this fight. And it's a perfect sleep, it's the one you're looking for, but there's no follow-up damage. And now Zhonya's on cooldown. They are going to group up for this Drake, and with the resets here for Infinity, it's actually going to give them a free soul point. But it does feel like this could have been a much nicer position had Peace not fully committed to that last fight.
A lot of these fights, to be honest, have kind of been like, okay, well, we have more vision. I think we got this guy caught out. Let's go on to it. And then it's like this pile-on effect where it's like, oh, who can get there? Who can get there on time? Should we use a teleport? And like everybody's just diving into the pit. The macro here in this later stage of the mid-game isn't, it doesn't feel structured very much, you know? It's like we got this 1v1, we got a big roam down to the bottom.
立兒真係打人好撚痛。
咁佢本身頭都多啊嘛。
佢打隻女口鬧好似切豆腐咁我都。
Is the part that's just a little bit too optimistic for me to stomach because, yes, it is a great sleep opportunity, and yes, you are a Fed Lilia, but you alone can't do it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the second you see that Aphelios, you could have said, okay, there's 4 men slept, like maybe Tally can jump in and kill everybody. Well, it's so risky. It's so risky to do that into the Aphelios who's got Crescendo and is just waiting. He's champing at the bit. Here we go. Speaking of which, they're going to get on top of the
逼咗女口鬧咁深啊！咁啊，莉莉亞俾李星同埋納兒夾死咗啊！咁啊，伊瑞利亞仲繼續輸出緊。咁啊，薩亞呢度閃現開大收羽毛啊，成功收咗幾個人頭翻嚟。咁啊，呢度剩翻納兒同埋薩亞，咁啊。納兒嘅輸出成功收翻傑西同埋薩亞呢兩個人頭啊，將呢個團戰由本來3換4變成4換5啊！一隻納兒救世界啊！
of what this team comp for Peace can do when their AD carry is there, when Violet is here. Now, if he had actually, you know, a third online, if he has an Infinity Edge here in this fight, I think they end up winning that swimmingly. He's not quite that far online just yet. He's 1-1 and 3 in this game, so we haven't reached that late game Xayah power yet. But what's scary for me for this for Infinity is that you can see that how difficult it is to kill this Aurelia in these team fights, and then the follow-up CC in these longer fights here for Peace.
原來呢個空咗好撚多招大。
And yes, at the end of the day, a Fed Bogax is going to clean up house, but look at how much space Tally buys her Violet. Like, he is untouched in this fight. Now, I know you're probably watching this thinking, well, Wolf, but I mean, they still technically win the fight. But this is terrifying, because in 5 minutes' time, you won't win this fight against Violet. If this sort of fight happens again, you don't get those blow-up kills, if you can't get on top of the AD carry, he's not supposed to be the last one to die. If he's the last one to die, you've got a big problem as Infinity.
This is why we're seeing so much priority on the Aurelia, by the way. Not only good in the lane, but also you build a couple of items. I'm sure you guys know the name of the 2 items. Core Drinker and the Sterix. And you run in there. Oh, how about a Death Stance as well? And how about some more armor against everybody who's fed that's not Silas, right? You deny so much more damage even just with that one item. And yes, you could potentially get CC down, but you're Aurelia. So like, he's just in a position to carry in this game because of that. The Silas is not really ending up doing much in this one. He has those 2 items online, and not to mention the 3rd item, which makes him even more tanky and survivable in these fights. And especially when there's 4 people on top of you, you're going to get even more value out of that Core Drinker, and it makes you even more annoying to handle. And having the majority of your damage being basically only the Aphelios is, you know, sometimes it's enough, but sometimes when you're facing a Federelli, it is not. As we're seeing an engage right now onto the Jace, they're trying to drop and they will be able to. They take down the Jace. A huge sleep is coming in. Let's see if the Aurelia can get it done. Tally is in the back line doing so much damage, but he will eventually be taken out by Bugax. As we do not see the Aphelios this time, but Bugax is like, I don't care, I'm the AD carry. Unfortunately, not really able to stand up to Violet and his red buff. He is chasing them down. And this Zaya, in a game like this, is ending up getting some decent value.
And Valdez, I said it was going to take maybe 5 more minutes, and then we'd see a fight where it doesn't go like that. But it was only moments after the previous one where we see Violet clean up house again. And Tally, he survives so long with these items, as you mentioned, that it just becomes nigh impossible to lock him down. And we're going to
立兒呢度擋唔擋人哋4龍咧？都係放啦，放咗啦。
Infinity, your options now feel very limited in terms of blowing up a carry. You look for the Jace in this scenario here. It's Vitachi who's actually locked down. But look at Bob in this fight.
雖然捉死咗人哋傑西啊，但係人哋嗰個伊瑞利亞嘅輸出位空間好大。
You've got to get on top of Violet here, but it's just too little too late. And if Violet, again, if he's able to survive long enough, we talked about it in the draft, Zaya is one of those champions that is impossible to lock down when you've got such a strong front line. And Peace look like they have practiced this Lilia comp so well. Every single one of these fights where you see Bob make that decisive flash, you know this was planned from the beginning. Vitachi is just the catalyst. Yes, he goes down, but you can win that 4v5 fight with a 4-man sleep.
You can see how much damage the Gnar is doing. The Aphelios actually one of the first to die on the side of Infinity. And the problem is that he's doing a lot of damage and he's mini Gnar, right? So, yeah, I mean, he's got a bunch of items. He's got Wit's End, he's got the Sterix, right? And he'll be...
同佢啲經濟喺晒立兒度，咁其實團戰只要拉開咗立兒就好大機會贏㗎咯喎。
係㗎，同埋立兒其實佢主要強勢。即係佢攞頭同埋強勢嘅地方都主要喺單大嗰度咧。其實只要逼團嘅話，紅隊嘅優勢係大好多。
And the Aphelios, you know, he's an item behind, but he will get his Infinity Edge fairly soon. He's got his Collector online. The problem is that getting this you know, Aurelia down to enough health where you can actually proc that and get that kill is really a big question for Infinity. They are obviously building a little bit of heal deny as well, but I think the biggest issue for me is that yes, you have a really tanky Gnar, yes, he can do a lot of damage, and he can set for these stuns, but you've got to take the fights in the right moments. I think looking for a single target blow up when Lilia exists and she is this fed might not be the plan anymore. You might actually have to just front to back team fight here. Play around.
咦？呢度留住咗隻李星啊！ 咁啊，李星呢腳踢咗伊瑞利亞，爭啲害死埋塞納斯啊！塞納斯即刻掉頭走咗。我冇咗李星啊！呢條龍都送埋俾人哋啦。
Had to use a bunch of stuff to get that out, but you can see Peace, they are not done just yet. The flash comes in, big charm though, and now we got White Lotus actually kiting back. You gotta be careful about this. TP now coming in, but it looks like Peace, even though they get themselves into a little bit of a dangerous spot, they will be okay.
Yeah, Violet just has the escape available. They didn't have to use any tools on the turn. The sleep, forcing the cleanse after the Baron is taken. Violet popping his ultimate there way later on, so you could be so aggressive. Tally's not even looking twice on the rotation, and he knows his teammates are very likely going to be safe there in that skirmish. But it all comes down to Solid Snake getting picked on that ward, and that's why you've got to be so careful about where you're sweeping as a team like Infinity here. If you lose your jungler at this critical moment before a Baron, your chances of going to the World's group stage might just be nil. Like, that's a moment that Infinity are going to look back on, and everything that happened.
立兒爭一件就齊裝噶咯，已經啲經濟去到。
但係得佢一個齊裝就未有用喎。
拯救世界嘅任務交俾佢啦。
So you can see the goal difference on time. It was very close for an extremely long amount of time. But now it's all Peace that have a pretty massive lead. And now with this Elder coming up in
呢個向前啊，就嚟變大，不過就選擇後退啊。
won't be able to take it down. So we'll have to see if he can get Meganar back here for this Elder fight. I believe he should be able to.
Yeah, this is going to be really critical as it's timing out now.
兩拿呢個交帶，
咁啊捉翻細啦。
立兒俾伊瑞利亞針對啊，咁喺嗰段時間係冇怒氣值嘅，就俾人哋收咗呢個頭啊！但係莉莉亞嘅暈呢，就暈住咗對方嘅 AD 啊！
咁啊，睇嚟就
一
大
波
勢而去啦，係啦。
一波啦。外卡打外卡。
You look at some of these later fights, unfortunately for Infinity Esports, Solid Snake gets caught. You're grouping up around that Elder Drake fight, or that Elder Drake pit, but what are you fighting for there? They're split up, there's a disconnect between the front line. Bugax gets dropped on, the back line is running away, and in that moment, Peace are decisive. You see this time and time again from Tally, the veteran, on this Aurelia. He was afraid of nothing in this game. And he's definitely my MVP coming out of this one because his plays, his survivability on this Aurelia gave Violet so much space, gave Bob the ability to engage in. And this is a very pivotal win here for Peace because it keeps their chances alive. And as you mentioned, they had the toughest opponents in the group starting things off. You get the momentum rolling here for your last few games, maybe you can turn it around. Maybe you make it through that tiebreaker. There's still hope.
There is definitely still hope. It's not going to be easy, but it has to start somewhere, and they do pick up a win. Unfortunately for Infinity Esports, I don't believe they have a chance now to make it out of the group, but they gave it a good shot, as we were hearing before from the analysis as well. A lot of their games were very close, and this one included, right? It sometimes comes down to some of the best of ones not really going too well for you. So we'll have to wait and see what they can do in the future. But that is going to do it for that game. Any final thoughts on that one, Wolf?
Really nice play from Peace overall. Infinity gave it their best. It was a rough group for them, but, you know, sometimes you make those critical mistakes. It's unfortunate.
Absolutely. So we'll have to see what happens in the future of this group. But guys, we're going to go to a break, and we'll hear from the State Farm Analyst Desk after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Make or break. Make it yours.
Red Bull gives you wings.
呢個係傑西啊，嗰邊嗰個。
嗯，
依家準備訪問嗰條友啦。
冇嚟過，我完全唔識啲選手。
咁個傑西好似喺呢場都冇乜做啲特別嘢嘅啫喎。
個傑西咪就係盡量唔好俾隻立兒再繼續單殺咯。
To this. Make or break. A new era is awaiting. Make it yours.
Welcome back to the State Farm Analyst Desk, where I can confidently say that was the most exciting game of the day that we've had so far here, as Peace finds victory over Infinity Esports to move to 1-2, keep their hopes of moving on to the next round alive, and they do it in awesome fashion. Again, it was neither the cleanest game from either of these two teams, Goldberg, but at the end of the day, they showed us what we were talking about from earlier, their ability to pull it together in the mid to late game, use their synergy as a team to ultimately overcome Infinity.
I, for one, do not think it was awesome. I still think.
I love. What do you mean?
I think it.
What?
It was a tough way to get there for them. I think it could have been, still way cleaner. But let's take it to the point you were talking about, right? So okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here. Let's take it to the point where we do get to the late game and we are watching these fights, because I think Tally on the Aurelia, despite not being the one picking up the kills all the time, had so much pressure juggling around the members of Infinity to try kind of get the ball going towards these late game team fights. And obviously, the man of the match, really for me here, Babib in the jungle, really showing up, not only in his lane presence, but also in the team fights, finding so many crucial sleeps to really make everything easier for Peace.
Well, then no surprise that Babip becomes our Oppo player of the game here in game number 3 of the day. And this is where I want to turn to you, Kaizen, because it sounds like maybe you're a little bit more aligned with me on the awesomeness of this game.
Hey man, I've been up since 2 a.m. and I thought that was awesome. That woke me up. And look, this was a sloppy game, but I loved it. This was Peace showing up. I was doubting them. I thought Infinity was clearly the better team, but what they showed from Peace is that they have multiple players who can step up. Just like Goldberg was saying, this was the Bobbit and Tally show. It was basically
隻鹿基本而出係會快啲㗎嘛，係嘛？
through the fact that there was a 12 and 2 Gnar.
隻鹿嗰個基本嗰個移速會唔會？
睇佢係開咗技中嘅時候先快。
He did not have the robust front line because his Silas was down so much CS. So really a fun game. I feel bad for Bugax, but really excited for Peace.
But still at the same time, I'm worried for Infinity as well, because you get this good of an early game with, from the Rift Herald fight where you just got everything going, the 4-0 Gnar in matchups where he shouldn't do well. This Gnar was picked into Irelia and Jace, and this is not usually a matchup that's supposed to work. He makes it work anyway, and despite this, they just can't clean it up when you get to these late game fights.
I mean, it is a perfect example of what we were talking about when it comes to this Infinity squad. We're going to see some amazing play out of Bugax as an individual, but struggling to convert those individual plays into team-wide success, Kaizen.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem here is, and this is an issue we've seen with Infinity multiple games now, when they have these advantages, they sort of lose focus and they don't actually play around it. There was a fight where Gnar is top right here, and they don't have vision in the enemy jungle, right? So this is a situation where you have a 4-0 Gnar. Why do you not either have your whole team there if you don't have vision, or have vision so you don't need your whole team there? And instead, they choose to go into this fight 2 versus 3. They don't have the reinforcements available to get a numerical advantage, and they end up throwing away the gold advantage that they had invested in the Gnar. So it was really disappointing to see from Infinity, and it felt like, honestly, Bugax was in a position where he was fighting against his team rather than having his team fight for him.
And on the flip side, it highlights that point you were making again, the ability of Peace to kind of recognize how they are going to be able to come back into this game, bringing Tally up to the top lane with support and jungle by his side to convert, big shutdowns. We have to remember, as Kaizen said, that was a 4-0 Gnar at that point, okay? So taking him down of all people is a massive influx of gold.
Definitely, but I think as much as we can celebrate Peace towards the mid to late game here, I also fancy now their chances going up against these other teams, because now we finally do see, if you get to the mid game where you're not completely shut down by the laning phase, but you're actually the one who gets to punish them. Like, I'm thinking back to the mid lane with Tally just blowing up the summoner spells early from the Silas. Like, the fact that he's not getting solo killed himself, the fact that he's able to utilize these resources for himself and later down towards the team fights, that gives me hope for OC as a region to still make it, because remember, you just have to not finish last place. You just have to do better than them.
Exactly. And so, yeah, refocusing back towards Peace as they were the victors in this game, Kaizen, I think it should be recognized that people might question how they even ended up down or against a Gnar that was 4-0, 13-2 at one point, as you said before, given the fact that they had both Jace and Aurelia, 2 solid matchups, either of which they could have played into Gnar. And so, again, we'll continue to hammer that point that they find themselves at times in deficits that they have to claw out of. And against tougher and tougher opponents as you move forward through this tournament, that's going to be a harder hill to climb.
Yeah, and you're not going to have that luxury versus the harder opponents. I think fortunately here, Infinity lost focus and Peace was given opportunities back into the game. And granted, we should acknowledge that I think Bobbeth and Tally just played mechanically extremely well. But you can't rely on that every game, particularly against teams that are going to have more mechanically proficient players. So what I want to see is them continue to focus on just having a stable early game. You don't even need to get ahead. We've seen that post laning phase, they're actually fine on the map, but just make sure to stabilize that early game because it almost got out of hand.
But guys, they've already played against LNG. They've already played against Hammer Live Esports. I'm not saying the other teams are not good, that's coming up. I'm just saying they started at the toughest hill, and now they just, they get to roll down. They have an easier time going downhill instead. So I'm more hopeful for them now than I was before.
A big victory for Peace and a momentum builder, to say the least. But here, as we head to a commercial break, check out Red's pick as the song that represents their play style and the rest of the teams competing at Worlds on the official LOL playlist on Spotify. They've chosen Industry Baby by Lil Nas X, an absolute banger, to say the least.
Good song.
It all leads to this. Make or break.
Vitality will take them!
A new era is waiting. Make it yours.
everybody. We are here at Worlds Play-ins, and it is me, Valdez, with Wolf, bringing you our final game of the day, the fourth game of the day, and it is a big one. It is Life Esports up against the Red Canids from CBLOL. This is going to potentially determine who can secure a second place spot. Of course, not going to be determined on this match, but it means so much because these are the two teams right below LNG.
That's right, and you know, if you're going to get that higher seed going into the play-ins bracket, this is going to skip a huge matchup for you. The less you get the show before the group stage, the better chance you have in the group stage, assuming that you make it. So there's a lot of things that are really critical here for Life Esports. I think for Life Esports as well, it's just re-solidifying the idea that in this group, they are favorites to be top 2, right? I don't think most people were putting them as number 1. You and I, kind of both broke down the group and we were thinking, okay, LNG number 1, Life Esports number 2. I don't think that's a unique thought that you and I have, right?
Yeah.
But for Life Esports to lose to LNG, but then also struggle against Infinity was a little bit worrying yesterday until they bounced back today in that first matchup. And to go 2-0 on the day to end the group with a 3-1, I think is kind of relieving for LCK fans if they're able to pull it off here and make it work.
Yeah, it's definitely a good feeling, obviously, but they are moving on to the Red Canids, and the Red Canids were able to show that, hey, we can get an early lead against a good team, right? They were able to do it up against LNG. Unfortunately, after that, LNG immediately clapped back, and it didn't last for too long, but LNG are an incredibly strong team, as we all know, at least in this play-in so far. So, can Life have that amount of strength? Can they potentially not fall behind? Because, something that this team gets touted for is their individual strength. You look at Chovy, you look at Deft, and can they potentially even get that we all know are so important?
知你點算？
咩？
唔知你點算？
咩點算啊？
你問點算啊？
咩？你講多次。
你啱啱嗌咩咁？
哦。
我哋啱啱唔係嗌點算咩？
咩黑爆點算？
我淨係聽到佢鳩叫啫喎。
釣魚牌乜撚嘢？即係講緊到2點鐘啊！真係。
係啊，個台仲開緊。
內九台啊嘛。
我屌。
係啊，
仲開緊㗎。不過個觀看人數都冇諗變過，應該冇人睇。
啦，我哋咁玩下先啦，
玩下咯。
shaking up expectations based on their performances in regular season, and performance on the day at the end where it matters most is the most important.
Yeah.
做乜嘢啊？係咪賴地硬啊？有 check 話輸又勝。
未開始，唔係咁嘅。
With one of the computers here, so looking to get that solved as soon as possible. And yeah, I mean, both of these teams are survivors, the way you put it, and they're here on this stage.
話唔定依家喺度裝緊啲外掛軟件咧。
咩 EXE 啊嘛 ，Red EXE 啊嘛。
And I'm just curious to see who's going to turn up today. Red Canids, they looked pretty frustrated after their loss against LNG, which is understandable because they got such a nice early lead. It just felt so good, right? You get 2 kills and you get the Rift Herald. Like, this is what dreams are made of in the early game.
可能有新嘢咧。
Yeah, maybe they're going to have that fiery revenge in their hearts and take it out on the LCK on Life Esports. As I'm getting an update, guys, that it is a mouse issue. Just looking to get that solved.
That's right. So usually small hardware issues like this are very easy to fix because sometimes you can just simply replace it if it's not fixable in terms of software or anything like that. But going back into that last game you mentioned with Red Canids actually having that lead and then falling behind, it was a game where the composition of LNG allowed them to get explosive picks and blow up single targets with the lethality that they had, right? And going into this series, Life Esports don't play that same sort of style. I don't think we're going to see Chovy on Zed, for example. I don't think that's, I mean, as much as I'd love to, I don't think we're going to go down that path.
We'll see.
原來電競選手比賽之前要揾嘢戳一戳先㗎喎，要熱身㗎喎。 你啱啱見唔到咩？要揸住啲嘢戳一戳先喎。
咁手部動作要做啲活動嘅。
下次我哋打機要咁樣戳一戳啊！
可能之前有咧，戳完先上線咧。
一打團戰係戳兩戳先，咁我團戰就有手感啦。
But they've moved into a more Gen G-esque style later on, where they're playing very slow towards late game scaling, playing around Chovy's ability to just scale up in terms of CS, get a few picks early, and then have that late game power, have that late game split pushing power with Morgan. That's why his Camille rose to priority so high at the end of the gauntlet. So things like this are things that Red Cannons are they want to make sure they have a lead early and actually can continue to snowball that against Hanwha Esports, more so even than they had against LNG, because Hanwha have been playing so slow recently.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good read, and we'll just have to wait and see. From what I can tell on stage, guys, it does look like the issue is solved. We got a bunch of fist bumps and stuff like that, so we're just testing settings and looking to get the show on the road. Once again, sorry for the small delay, but really excited for this one. I think it could be a very fiery matchup. We just saw a bit of that with Infinity Esports up against Peace. We had an insane amount of kills, very back and forth. I would not be surprised if we see it here as well. We're getting the focus onto Deft. Him and Vista actually played very nicely against Peace in their first game of the day. And obviously another confidence booster for the side of Hanwha Life as well. As it does look like we are just about ready to hop into Pick Band.
Looks like it. This is going to be such a critical one for both of these teams. Hanwha Life Esports
哇！立布朗差唔多係必 ban 嘅喎。我一開始就見到立布朗出現咗嘅啦。
咁呢隻可以秒人噶嘛？咁唔 ban 呢隻 ban 邊隻先？
都冇乜好 ban。
係呢隻會好似比較強勢噶嘛？
其他要用 ban 咗冇得用。
Will we see it banned again against Chovy? I think, obviously it can be flexed, but it's definitely something that Chovy has mentioned multiple times in multiple interviews, actually, that he thinks it's an extremely strong pick. Not to the point where you can't win against it, but he thinks that, if it's available, he's probably going to play it. So, curious to see what the Red Cannons think about that. Maybe they've been practicing their mid-Gragas. Would be interesting to see how they decide to counter it if it does come out.
The Ezreal ban here screams that they want to prioritize Titan into the misfortune role here, I think, because yes, Deft has played a lot of Ezreal.
會 ban 好運姐咧？最近鋪彈隻好運姐出嚟，要 ban 關。
It feels like they're trying to deny some comfort here. The same goes, of course, with this Gwen ban towards the Red Cannons. But if you're going to ban the Ezreal here, it looks like misfortune priorities on the menu. It would be a huge mistake, I feel, to
即刻就揀咗好運姐啦。下隻會唔會再揀埋阿姆姆咧？
Now the question becomes, do Hanwha Life Esports try to deny that Amumu pick that they dominated Peace with?
Yeah, it's pretty rough, and it's a good call, Wolf, because,
how
can you deny at this point? There's no other support bans, and actually, they're just going to go back to try it and test it. As the commitment for the side of Hanwha Life Esports probably going to be in the hands of Morgan, and we even have the Talia, rather, alongside of that Camille. A nasty duo together can be really hard to play against.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful in terms of how much you can control the side lane. So now, if you're Red Cannons, you have to really think about this counter pick for the Camille. How do you want to have a side laning champion that's going to be able to put up with the Camille?
招信阿姆姆啊！咁我留翻中上路。
Towards the second part of the draft here as they lock in the Xin Zhao, and they will get that Amumu that was left open. But going back now to the side of Hanwha Life Esports, there's a lot of AD champions available that Chovy likes to play if he's given something like the Taliyah. Even the Yone is not out of the question, but to do it
揾海沙，海沙喺呢個版本唔算強勢喎。
such a critical match. I think you hold off on that for now. They'll lock in the rare Kaisa here for Deft.
Very interesting. Kaisa, definitely a pick that you kind of know for, you know, you have a big team fight, somebody lands some hard engage, she hops into the back line and wreaks havoc, right? But actually the repositioning effect of her ultimate can be used at times to get you to safety. Not sure if he's going to be able to do against this really insane combo that we already have on the side of Red Cannons, but we will have to see. Very short range. I don't think it's going to do very well in the lane at all against what we are looking at with the MF and Amumu. But we'll see what Hanwha Life have up their sleeves as we do have Cannon bans here away from Gigo.
Yeah.
And the Yone away from Chovy.
The Yone was talking about something that Chovy has played so much with the Taliyah. We talked about it in that Peace series. We might just also see the Yasuo come along with it, but the thing about the Kennen pick here is that it's one of the most common responses in the LCK to this Camille, because yes, you might struggle in terms of the side laning later on, but you can
ban 晒啲魔攻輸出佢。
hit those stuns. The Q buff that came a long way, a little way back, but you also have the ability to team fight better than a Camille often with that. So just removing the Rise, which could be such a great counter to this pressure that you're going to see on the top side with the Camille and the Taliyah. With Weaver's Wall, you have essentially a pseudo-global with this pick, and if you have a Rise to match that rotation, you don't get that same power in that top matchup. We don't know what the matchup will be just yet, but it's a great ban here onto Greftar.
Now, Chovy could wait. They could go ahead and pick their support here and save counter pick. The Leona is available, not banned away on the side of Red Cannons because they're so scared of Chovy's AD picks for a good reason, right? You already have the safety jungler in here. We don't want to see yet another AD Chovy is extremely well versed on. So they try to ban out as many as possible. That means that Vista is able to get his hands on the Leona pick. And what is going to be the follow-up here? We saw Jax out of LNG.
咁啊，仲有隻中路，會唔會揀酒桶？但係酒桶同火雲者好似冇乜拉攏。球女啊，卡牌。
And we also could still see Chovy end up playing something like the Azir. Now, I really like this Twisted Fate. It's an alternative option, right, versus the Rise in terms of dealing with that Weaver's Wall pressure on the top side of the map. As don't think we're going to be seeing Nami here. That would have been, you know, I'd love to see Chovy play mid Nami, but the Azir is still an option here, and you can threaten the Twisted Fate. You have kill pressure there. But the Silas is extremely strong. You can
貝勒斯再加埋克里同埋呢個塔利亞，好重魔攻輸出喎。雷歐娜有魔攻嘅。
Absolutely. I was thinking that Chovy was going to pick up the TF, especially after the Rise ban, but the Silas, after seeing the TF, makes a lot of sense, and we do see it come through here. And not only is it a fantastic pick into the TF, but Chovy, you know, we can say this about a lot of his picks, but Silas is one of these ones where he has been known to just take off on a jet plane and solo carry. So, can he do it here again against the Red Cannons? Very curious to see, as he'll definitely be looking to put on a lot of pressure in that mid lane.
Very, very exciting stuff here. The tension is high in the world stage right now. This is such a pivotal match for both of these teams, and Greftar, rising star here in the CBLOL region, picked up by Red Cannons just for playoffs, ended up picking up multiple MVP wins in that grand finals. He was one of the star players, one of the reasons why they're here, and now he faces off against the most famous mid laner in play-ins, in Chovy, one of the stars that is rising around the world. The name Chovy, nobody doesn't know who he is anymore, even though he's a play-ins player right now. Part of the reason why people were so excited to see Hanwha Life Esports was to see Chovy dunk on, you know, some of these emerging regions, and I think Greftar might give him a run for his money here. This matchup between the Twisted Fate and the Silas can definitely be one that absolutely goes Silas favored if the Twisted Fate makes some mistakes, uses some gold cards at inopportune moments. That's when Chovy will strike, and that's where it can be so terrifying. So this is going to be a good one, Valdez.
This is the big final shebang from Group A in the play-ins today. And I'm really excited that we get to be here, you and I, Wolf, and get to do this game.
30 seconds until
we definitely feel like Red Canids could come in here and pick up a win, but Life looking intimidating as well after they absolutely stomped Peace earlier today.
And it was with the, Amumu support in the bottom lane. This time they play against it, so we'll see how they end up performing here. The mention that you had earlier about Depth's ability to ult into these team fights just feels so incredibly strong when you think about this composition.
咦，入侵人哋區添，我仲有會人添喺度。
Willer can, of course, ult in. You've got Morgan's Hextech ultimatum and the Solar Flare. If I'm Titan in this game, I am so terrified. You better take that cleanse. He did. But still, even one cleanse isn't going to be enough. I mean, yeah, there's a decent amount of peel here between the Amumu, obviously the gold cards that you're going to have, and this Xinjiao. But positioning is going to be everything, and if you overstep for just one moment, your cleanse is gone. You overstep a second time, and all your damage, your consistent range damage is gone for Red Canids here. So important Titan's performance here on this Misfortune.
Yeah, absolutely, and likewise for the bottom lane of Life, I feel like Deft in this lane, especially against Arcane Comet MF, which you do see, it's going to be rough. You're going to get zoned away a lot. You're going to take a lot of poke damage here. He's doing a nice job of actually clearing the wave faster than Titan is, so having some luck with that should hit level 2 first, and that will certainly help him out with that. As Willer, one thing to mention is his jungle pathing from Game 1 against Peace, where he went level 3, got red buff, did Raptors into blue, got level 3, and then he went bot immediately. And that was after Deft and Vista were able to put on the herd at level 1. We'll see if he tries to replicate that here in this game against the Red Canids.
Yeah, it's a really good thing to point out. His start solo means that obviously Deft can clear quickly, as you mentioned before. It's a really nice pathing to take here, and the threat that you have with this Leona is similar to what you have with an Amumu, but there's an Amumu on the other side, so I don't think he'll be able to commit as heavily there on the bottom side of the map.
上咪不停換血啊！即刻嚟個夾擊咯！
It's a pretty even start. Looks like he's not going to be alone. Grefthar taking the long walk, but that's such a valuable ward.
Yeah, Red Canids were like, oh, who's the weak link on how
好，呃咗個傳送就走啦。
And they're all going to be coming up here on top of the ward. The teleport comes in immediately from Jovi, and it looks like the Red Canids will actually respect that and not commit to their level 3 roam to the top side. That was pretty scary.
That was such a sick
咁啊呢度，呃翻逆命嘅傳送，喺呢度會唔會出人頭啊？ 嗱，喺呢度攞到2殺。
To Leah, so wow, Red Canids coming in hot in the bottom lane.
Now this is going to cost Grefthar a lot of farm, but he'll be happy to take a kill and an assist for the trade. And the really cool thing about this is it's all a setup plan, because when you go look at the top side play, you walked up there, so you get to keep teleport. You know that Chovy can't match your teleport bottom because he had to use it top. You have a lot of power here. You know the gank is coming. You remember it from last game, and if Willer wasn't top, he's going to be here. And this is so critical, actually, and they're able to get that trade back kill here as Deft. Because without that, you feel really terrible about this scenario. He's going to end up going down here anyway at the end of the day. But this is such a great macro play. The trade-off, though, is the CS.
Oregon is able to buffer it, but it doesn't matter when there's 3 of them in the top lane.
啊，呢啲幾激烈。
They're going to force a flash. As we got action in the mid lane as well. Chovy trying to tank it up, and the damage is there.
5分鐘6個人頭啦。
Titan isn't done just yet. He's got that strut and was thinking about it, but Chovy able to get over the wall. At least he gets to safety, but man, there's so much action on this map.
That's going to mitigate a lot of the CS deficit there that Grefthar had mid to push Chovy out of lane. You could see that Titan is actually just going to hover mid for a little while himself to pick up some of the slack there. He's also finding himself behind in CS, but the kills are coming through. As Morgan is collapsed on twice in this game.
Oh, Ignite, he's looking for it. The kill on the Gigo, and he's gonna get it. Gigo this time not respecting it. He picked up his own sheen. He's like, well, I must be really powerful now. Loses his counter-strike, and immediately Morgan strikes back.
Without the counter-strike there, you're not going to be able to compete. Aegis now coming up here to pick up the slack as jungles are just on cleanup duty after what has been a 7 kills in 6-minute game. Less than 6 minutes, I should say. As Morgan has a level advantage because Gigo spent so much time on the bottom side of the map. That level advantage really helps out here. As you see this commit onto Greftar, gets the gold card up here and dodges.
You see him dodge that seismic shove? That was insane.
The guy is extremely talented. I really am so glad he's actually here, and he got picked up for playoffs, and he's being played here, you know, against Chovy, right? I mean, this is the dream for play-ins, right? If you're a rookie player like Greftar, you can go all the way to the top, and yes, he's 13 CS down on Chovy, but who isn't down on CS against Chovy?
Yeah, I mean, the early game was just absolute chaos, so, you know, CS be what it may.
The macro plays from Red Cannons have been really cool and clearly well prepared. The problem is that all of these rotations have ended up costing them big in terms of farm and in terms of some of the gold that we're seeing. Like, yes, Morgan is down a kill,
上阿懵係咪瞓着
a
咗？
lot of power there, cost some CS there for Vigo in the top lane. Willer is going to help clear up this dragon. It's going to be first straight going over to Honda Life Esports. Chovy's lead is starting to be pretty insane. The experience lead he has means he has level 6 first, so you've got to be careful about him stealing that destiny away. Everyone needs to be all eyes on where Chovy
冇咗
is
聲氣，
to use that hijack.
一陣斷咗咁就好笑啦。
因為佢啱啱斷咗一次㗎啦，所以先
芒啊！
我估佢瞓着咗。
And with that, he's actually walking pretty deep into the enemy jungle. That ward is so lucky, like it's right in between those two control wards.
Yeah.
And it's going to get him some good value, actually. A couple of defensive control wards from Red Cannons, not able to spot that one is pretty unfortunate. As we're getting a closer look here. Even Vista's going to roam up to the mid lane, clear one out. He's thinking about it, but not going to take the risk of going into the enemy jungle and clearing the second one.
We've talked a lot about the chaos. We've talked about, you know, the advantages that Morgan's been able to gain, Chovy's CS lead, but we haven't really touched on the bot lane, which is Deft just absolutely forcing Titan out of lane. We saw Deft gap in that Peace series. He's doing it again here. There's the hijack. Got to be so careful right now as Aegis, because you're between a rock and a hard place. Morgan was heading down, and Chovy could be there in a moment's notice. Ooh, clear that ward is pretty brave. He will get out here, but that was a risky moment.
開預示屌呢個
Zhao things, Willer coming on over, and he is going to start this one up. No ping on it just yet, but I think he started it right after the ward went down, so...
哇下路靠上嚟開預示者。
Here as the rotation is coming up from Deft and Vista. Chovy with the Destiny if he needs it. He's going to give a little bit of breathing room at least.
趙信會唔會嚟搶咧？
To CS down on the bottom side, but getting this is pretty nice. As now we have the Destiny here on this one, but Chovy is right in front. Trying to stop this, trying to knock Aegis away, and it will be enough as they do get the eye. As in comes Aegis, trying to look for a little bit more. Morgan is going to be frontlining. Here comes Willer. That wall does absolutely nothing, but it is going to buy some time for him to get in position. Yellow card comes in, but now look at Chovy.
雷歐拿得暴叫街啦！
Picks up the double kill somehow on this one, and Willer has set up vision behind Greftar, who has no mana. And Dev just alone down here on the bottom side, but he will survive.
He will survive here, and, you know, they decide they're not going to drop the Rift Herald just yet. There was an opportunity with 3 grouped up. Actually, while I say that, here's a teleport in there. In fact, going to drop it. Willer says, you know what, this is just a free full plates of turrets first brick over to us. Well, there's a lot of consideration here about dropping it, but they are not going to commit, in fact. But either way, the advantages you have here as Honda Life Esports are really starting to balloon because you have such a late rotation over as Red Cats. You could see that they decided to do it based on the fact that Deft rotated back to lane. And when we went back to, or if you look back at that moment where Deft is coming up, it's very LCK-esque. You can see he's leaving now as he's just not able to get there. But the thing I want to mention about this team fight is that Honda Life Esports expected this rotation. It didn't come. and they still were able to react to the delayed rotation over so quickly because Chovy was here first. That you have so much CC as Hanwha Life, you can turn this around. Morgan gets out of this fight so easily, and as you mentioned, Chovy.
佢頭先嗰招揀開個場個招係咪空一檔？佢好似
唔係嘅，佢費事人哋會退後啫。佢趁自己隻雷歐拿到嘅時候，佢都有刪翻嘅。整體嚟講，殺咗預示者，收多對面兩個。好難話人哋係空嘅。
So Willer was actually able to win that kind of mind fight and pick up the Rift Herald as well, and then join the fight with his Weaver's Wall. So really cute stuff on the Talia, gotta love it. And Vista, casually, the most bloodthirsty support I think we've had so far. Shout out to Doa. And yeah, I mean, he's 3-0. He picked up a double kill on that last one, and he is... I just love him because he has a stopwatch. Yeah, it's perfect.
咦，有嘢睇啊！退咗添。
Valdez's favorite thing, or least favorite thing, depending on the situation. Best item in the game. Grefthar taking a lot of damage.
Jojo was there, that was close. But Chovy gonna sidestep it.
He was 2 levels up, you know, and he's got 3 Dark Seal stacks, a little bit of extra AP coming through, but Chovy's the type of player who, if you give him just an inch like that to trade, he will trade and get out without flash, with no fear, even though he knows Jojo is there.
咁串喺呢一度放埋預示者嘅。
Solo laners are just not quite as fed, and they finally get the 1 kill, but it's a 2-for-1, and the plays in favor of Hanwha Life, and Chovy has a free lane.
Yeah, Chovy has a free lane. He's already ahead in CS. He's just trying to crash waves in.
哇！冇呢度掛咗，咁啊，奕明又出現啦，到人哋傳送啦。
Here's a teleport that's coming on in. Grefthar getting jumped on, not able to survive against the Kaisa as now Morgan's getting into the fun. Gonna miss on that one.
好彩仲有隻海沙有大招追啫，唔係啱啱嗰個位幾尷尬。
咁啊呢邊又俾人反捉翻。
We're not done fighting yet, apparently, as Aegis is going to get pushed away, but Deft has the Noon Clipper and the Serrated Dirk. That's all he's got in this moment, but he knows it's enough to kill a Twisted Fate if he ults in. Like, this is the star power of Deft, the experience of players on multiple teams, playing in this play.
交咗個閃現啫，
走唔到啊！
He's gonna flash, and you know what? Yeah, with the Kingslayer, he's like, nope, you guys don't have anti-heal just yet. I'm totally fine.
Usually it's Willer who's kind of carrying and doing all the grunt work for Chovy, but Chovy's doing the grunt work for Willer here because that's going to guarantee them a great. Yeah, and like Vista, by the way, I think often overshadowed by LCK fans by supports like Carrier, right?
哇！3個噸嘅一個，好難醒啊嘛，都唔使醒啊。
Just to add to the little bit of fiesta that we have in this game. Morgan's just going to go ahead and face check. Good job by the Red Cannons. They clear out all the vision in the river, and that is a free kill for them.
Well, now, you know, that's a little bit of extra gold going over to this Misfortune who so desperately needs it. She's about to finish her call as well, so they're going to be big moments for her in terms of getting that money over. Is yes, even though there's a whiff here on the Solar Flare, the damage is real here for Deft, and yes, teleport comes through, but Deft's like, I've got the items. I can actually 1v2 this. Teleport comes through, but like it doesn't matter. It's more fighting in.
哇！呢個傳送。
By the way, he has stopwatch, guys. Called it out before. Now Chovy's going into 4 though, as he is somehow going to survive and try to turn it around with that Everfrost. Not quite the cleanest fight we've ever seen, as Red are trying to get on in there. Now Deft trying to 1v1. Not sure about this, buddy. Maybe a little bit overconfident on that, assuming the rest of the Red Cannons had left. And that might just be the second Rift Herald over to the Red Cannons.
I mentioned it in the Peace series, or game rather. I mentioned, you know, I think it was mentioned by everybody yesterday. Well, Life Esports have a bit of a tendency here in play-ins to, with a lead, overextend, play with their food a little bit. It's not the first time we've seen Deft get caught. We've seen Chovy get caught several times, and Red Cannon's very happy to pounce on the opportunity, knowing Deft doesn't have cleanse. Pick him off here. That's a huge amount of shutdown goals going over to the Cannons here. Save this turret just barely. And they're still hanging in this game. Yes, they have objectives stacked against them. Yes, they are dealing with a huge deficit in terms of the mid lane. But oftentimes, you know, Twisted Fate, not about the damage.
呢下衝埋啲老網啦。
That's still a thing. That's still something that he will be able to do consistently later on in this game.
想問你哋係咪睇緊英文台啊？
英文咯。
我中文台又有 delay 喎，睇嚟。
係 delay 好耐嘅中文台。
咁我睇翻中文台先，咪英文台先。
睇中定英。
Perhaps even on this Infernal Soul point fight. And doing that right now with the items they don't have is going to be such a tall order. And they're going to lose this top turret eventually. Now, finally, they didn't drop the Rift Herald earlier, crashed him, but they didn't get the turret, and now Morgan's happy to sweep up the last pieces.
Yeah, even going to deny some of those melee minions. Not bad, not bad. As the biggest surprise for me in the goal difference was actually how Chovy's going to steal that. And it's actually that Chovy's only 200 gold ahead of the TF that he's about 60 CS ahead of. And again, it's a lot of assists, it's a lot of kills to the side of TF, and it's TF. So he's got a way to get some extra gold. But it means that, you know, Chovy isn't as ahead as it looks in the CS department. I mean, well, in the CS department he is, but overall. And so, will be interesting to see if Grepthar can get some stuff done, as we do have the second Riftfell drop down in the bottom side. Chovy looking to actually continue fighting, not scared of this.
呢個預示者放出嚟做塔，尷尬。
Will just barely save the turret here. You see Chovy alone, 1v2, and a Rift Herald dropped, and you walk the other way because you know Chovy's going to buy tons of time. You know Vista's in the vicinity. They get a flash away there from Jojo, which is pretty massive because that's something that he can use as an initiation tool to pick off somebody like Deft if they're able to get that cleanse, right? But now it's down. Small advantages across the board here for Life Esports in that regard, but I mean, the farm is starting to get out of control as Chovy and Deft are racing to 200 here. That almost tied 169, 168, and right now as Red Cannons, this is not a game where you could just sit back and go, well, we'll just out-farm this, we'll just wait for the late game, we'll scale it up, because that's not this kind of game, you know? This is not the Jax that we saw from Ale against Life Esports that just blocked all of Deft's damage and started to carry the game despite a weak laning phase. This isn't that type of game. You can't just sit back and wait. You're going to have to take a decisive fight here on this Infernal Soul point. If you can't win this one, winning the game is almost out of the question. This is it. Make or break, right? This is the moment here for Red Cannons.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that they're not messing around with this one. They're all waiting in this brush. They're trying to clear out as much vision as possible. And in terms of the map state, even though Red Cannons are grouped up here, they still have pressure on the bottom side because the Jax is in a good spot right now. Even with that extra attack speed to, you know, push Morgan out of the lane. So even though Chovy's in the top side, he doesn't have teleport yet. It's like, okay, just came up right now.
There he comes.
So here they go. As the Weaver's Wall will come in, but the Shintown turnaround is huge as the damage from the
哇，冇人理隻佢沙喎。
but they kite it back, and Red Cannons have the damage here. The Jax in the front line now going extremely deep, but you have the follow-up from Jojo as well as Grepthar. Super close fight as so many low health bars on the side of Life, and Red Cannons are just looking to chase them down. Not going to get any more kills under their belts, though. And so even though there are so many low health bars, Red Cannon's not able to take a significant position on the Infernal Drake.
Yeah, Tetons, both summoners down. There's no way to go in here and continue the fight, and that means the Drake doesn't go over to them. Life Esports actually stay here. We'll clear these wards up and actually go for the clear themselves. Teleport's going to the top lane here, actually, right now for Grepthar, so he's not going to come in here and try to contest despite the ward being here. You know you don't have any other support, but this means that not only do Life Esports trade up 2-1 in the fight, but they still get that Infernal Soul point. But this was a little bit sloppy. I was really worried, actually, here for Life Esports when they just kind of face-planted into this fight and this new Axe Effect replay, because this is the moment where when you go into this fight, as Life, you actually give Red Cannons the distance that they struggle to close. Actually, you've given it to them by just kind of directly going into this, but Willer survives just barely. Deft is fended up and has the cleanse to get out of the situation and survive, and they actually end up trading up here. Could have just left Chovy to get that top turret, push for the inhibitor, and say, hey, we're already up 2. Can't fault it too much because it worked out, but it was a heavy risk, and Red Cannon still couldn't pull it off.
Yeah. Side of Red Cannons, I mean, they have a pretty nice way to protect their MF, right? There are multiple ways you consider the Camille, you consider the Kaisa, the Silas, right? To access the backline and the squishy underbelly that is the MF of this composition. But then you consider, you know, the Amumu's there. You put down the Curse the Sad Mummy. You have the TF for the gold card. You have the Xinjiao, you push everybody away. Even the Jax counter-strike right there. So Hummerlife had to be careful about extending too deep if they don't have a sure kill onto one of the carries like a TF, like an MF. And even then, you got to be careful, especially if the MF is available. Big bullet time can just wreck your entire team because you're not overall super tanky. And, you know, you see some stopwatches here and there, but even like a Zonya's just yet for Chovy not really online, so it's not too much armor that's been built against the lethality of the MF just yet. So this is like a really crucial and
預測中2場，有橙粉啊，
有橙粉咁好？啱唔啱？橙粉，
橙粉咋？跟住再中多場咧，就係、鎖匙碎片，唔係喎，係啦，鎖匙碎片啦，跟住再中多場咧，就係、一條鎖匙。
哇！
即係多謝
公司喎，佛心公司，
多謝晒，好佛心啊！呢、個遊戲
唔係呢個遊戲好佛心，係呢間公司好佛心。Gurlina 係佛心公司嚟㗎嘛。
係啊。
then it is going to be very difficult. As you can see, they're already clearing away tons of this vision right now. They're starting to really grab onto the game. As Deft is now 2 items completed, extremely fed. Jovi's starting to come alive. He's got his second item up. This is where the Camille starts to split push, right? And the Jax that isn't fed this game is 3-4-2. He's doing all right. Gigo can't really keep up with that if there's a rotation in from Chovy at any moment.
屌，我全部揀咗邊，炒撚晒，
炒晒。一睇就知紅隊旺啦，間公司咩底㗎？
買外卡隊對面咪贏坐底贏幾場。
哇！巴龍啊，咪打巴龍應該唔係做視野啫。
難啲喎，打巴龍假使有傳送。
喂，就即係左邊嗰隊贏就睇下隻假絲打唔打到啦，飛唔飛得起啦。不過而家火龍仲有分半鐘到火龍雲，好緊要咯，唔可以俾佢搶到第4條龍咯，點都要揀嚟咯，我覺得。
唔係緊嘅咩？
條兵線推緊啦，樓下石卡密爾推緊條兵線，下路條兵線。
好，呢度譯明開大啊！
我以為雪撚晒添，
漏住隻歐拿，但係漏。
冇啦。
啊！炒撚晒車啦！
炒車，
記得對翻個貪馬啊！
個貪馬嗰個人瞓着咗喎，放貪馬嗰個點對啊？咦，又喺度喎，醒翻。
冇巴龍，話巴龍再加小龍，
冇晒啦！
好，
唉，又貼唔中，辛苦。
紅隊啦，間公司紅底噶嘛，梗係pick紅隊噶啦。
咩啊？點分紅隊啊？右邊啊？右邊就一定係紅隊啊！揀嗰度係。
應該係啊，
係啊，
佢本身 LL 佢設計咁。
哦，
佢整埋俾你噶嘛。今日已經3場紅隊贏噶啦，呢場第4場啦。
之前係咪有個統計係有咩㗎？有分紅定藍2啲贏咁樣㗎？
有㗎，
好似係話
呢個係
應該係藍隊啲贏。
藍隊咯，因為藍隊係先pick咯，所以大勝率啲咯藍隊。
係嘅咩？
我覺得係男女個視覺會易大咯。
以前係話計嗰個視覺咁啊，可能就係因為真係嗰個視覺係好睇啲嘅。
但男隊仲要先pick 喎，我覺得有優勢啲男隊。唔知啦，我呢啲銅牌係咪講排位㗎？
我仲銅牌過你嘅。
啊，排位咩嚟㗎？LOL 有排位嘅咩？
哇，好差！
咁有啲聽講白金先做咗賽評㗎嘛，但係有啲黃金都做到喎，唔知邊個咧？
你白金瞓覺㗎喎，
白金瞓咗覺喎，真係。
Grevthar and Titan have both shown a lot of emotions in this game, and you could feel the frustration. Remember the last match against LNG kind of slipped through their fingers the lead they had this game. They had really nice.
冇力佢打落去。
The early game from Red Cannons, even though it didn't hold that thought. Aegis.
They're going in. They're going to bait out that bullet time and deft. He's
4小龍，一個巴龍，冇啦，經濟差距10K 啦，
好多啦，
差唔多10K 啦。
爭人成件裝啊，大佬運者。
有冇導播可唔可以幫我整啲每個人經濟出嚟啊？好似唔得喎呢度。
呢度邊個做？
點撳到啊？
開緊團啊，仲同你睇經濟。
好啦，又係紅方贏。
一人都多一件裝啊，點打？
Second highest seed you can get going into that final match to put yourself in the group stage. Hanwha Life, bit of a rocky start against LNG. Their Infinity
你下鋪11點啊？
not as clean as you would have hoped, but their last two games tonight are the ones that the fans wanted to see. The Hanwha Life fans, the Chovy fans.
3-1係咪基本上出線啊？3-1。
超過4嘅話就一定出咯。
我覺得4-0就一定出嘅。
3嘅話有機會3-3咯，之後可能要加打多場。
哦，即係咩啊？佢哋係循環，即係每隊要打6場
，6場咯。要公平噶嘛，你打同一隊要一個係藍邊嘅話，你要調翻轉咁樣個場嚟打啊嘛，為咗證明公平咯。咁咪要打2場啦，同一隊嘅話。
所以6場。
唔係啊，今次係打4場啊，佢一組5隊啊。
一組5隊教。
一組5隊咁多人咩？
即係成個循環賽要打幾場啊？即係
兩個 group 啊，2個 group 即係10隊入10隊咯。
唔係，我想問即
係每隊要打4場，4隊都打唔同人。
係咯。
即係大家淨係碰面機會係1次嘅啫喎。
同分咪打加賽咯。唔明點解今年變咗有一個 group 係5個人咯。
定係呢個？因為預先賽啊，
入圍賽啊，
入圍賽
啊嘛，點入圍賽？
入圍賽一組兩個位。
所以頭先嗰個應該入咗位啦，頭先嗰隊。
咁即係其實贏一半，即係打4場贏2場都已經基本上入位嘅嘞喎。
佢跟住。
你知咩
？HLE 跟住就冇賽事啦，佢打晒4場啦。 3日啊佢3日㗎嘛，入硬啦。
呢個卡文真係勁咗。
除非有同分咪打加賽咯。
啲男仔配合好好，但係又打唔緊嘅。
Make or break. Make it yours.
Welcome back to the State Farm Analyst Desk, where it's Hanwha Life Esports that comes away with the victory over the Red Canids and Kaizen. I'm going to come to you first on this one because, in all seriousness, it did look like this game could have gone either way based on the way it got started, with a couple of early plays going the way of the Canids, but ultimately it fell out of favor for them. Your take?
Yeah, so I think this was sort of death by 1,000 cuts. And what I mean by that is Grethar, I thought, had a great game where he was really involved with side lanes. He was constantly using his ult and his TP. It felt like on cooldown to try to turn 2v2 scenarios into 2v3s and so on. But I think Chovy was just way more efficient. And I think this is a product of not just Chovy's individual play, him focusing on staying in lane, getting tower plates, and only leaving lane when he's really sure that he's going to be able to have an impact, but also the effect that Willer was able to have in virtue of him having Talia and having hit a semi-global in his own right. So I think this was a team loss. Like, I think HLE just showed that they were the better team, but I think in terms of the mid lane matchup,
出中啦。
邊個肥仔係咪我？
came at a heavy price.
Well, from here I'll turn to you, Goldberg, because I know preceding this match, this was one you
又
actually
要決戰合谷之巔。
但係邊個打緊喎？但係尖仔打緊喎。
尖仔打緊㗎，
做緊棋喎。
你幾耐輸啊你？反正都輸㗎
係啊，
啦。
合谷之巔咪即係棋咯。
係啊，合谷之巔咪即係棋咯。
咪雲頂，唔係叫佢唔係叫雲頂之翼咩？
差唔多啦。
依家
咁啲呢個激鬥峽谷咩？唔係手遊嚟嘅咩？
嗱啲咩嚟㗎？
激鬥峽谷咯。
It's so much easier for Hanwha Life Esports to really take
control, and I think they really struggled with was the objective as well.
依家先3-2啫喎。
So it's super easy for Hanwha Life Esports to stack it, and I think
哇！
especially
你
down
明
towards
白
the
先
bottom
今
side.
屆咁慘。
3-2咪有個投降掣撳咯，
贏緊
啱
喎。
啱喂投啦，
投啦，
出嚟啦！
No, they definitely impressed again with some of the early action that they took, and we saw again, Kaizen.
你打一句你俾班垃圾，我特登輸俾你嘅，跟住投降。
咁樣會俾人 ban 嘅喎。
你俾人 ban 啫嘛。
因為個個咁得閒。
係㗎，我見到呢啲會好客氣咁 ban 埋佢啊，冇啦。
It doesn't. I mean, at that point, you know, what you're dealing with is just a better macro team with one of the best mid laners in the world. And it's really difficult because this is sort of a narrative that we've seen time and time again with teams from major regions versus teams from the emerging regions. Generally speaking, from a mechanical perspective, yes, there's a gap, but it's not necessarily enormous. Where it comes from is efficiency with
諗唔到上咩可以上到喎。
係咩？是但啦，
好撚搞
都得。啊係喎，回 percent 血嘅喎，係啲撚線喎呢隻。
嗱，我覺得嗱，你5星一定要玩維哥爾，維哥爾真係好勁。
我征服喎，征服暴擊劍、暴擊手套喎。
唔係維哥爾真係好強，講真。維哥，我先講維哥爾，成個維哥。
跌咗。
some extra breathing room. It's what went wrong from them in LNG, and we're still seeing signs of it.
Another victory for the Korean squad here at Worlds 2021. We're going to step away, and when we come back, we'll get to listen in on some in-game chatter with Bo.